Hey guys, and welcome to the Product Angle. On today's episode, I have Katelyn. Katelyn is one of the speakers for PitchSide 2020. Katelyn, thank you for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So tell me a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Sure. So I am a marketer turned product person turned marketer again. I started out my career as a marketer, kind of grew a small agency, had two consulting businesses, sold one, and got into this idea of like, I want to build my own product. I want to market my own thing, and ended up launching a startup. And the kind of like really short version of that is at one point, Forbes and Inc. magazine said we would be the next LinkedIn for women. But since
Wow.
I'm sitting here and not on a beach drinking a mojito, that is not at all what happened. Lots and lots of sad and horrible things along that rocky road, but learned a ton, got really immersed in the product world, the startup world, the tech world. And after closing down that company, trying to figure out what I want to do next, it just became this evolution of the skills that I developed, the marketing and working with product teams. And today what I do is I help product teams figure out who their best customers are and what triggers those customers to buy. Because a lot of product people are awesome at building products, not great at getting people to know about them. I kind of had the opposite problem. We were great at getting people to know about us, not great at building products. So I'm hoping to help some people with my experiences.
That's awesome. And that's exactly the reason why I've picked you to be one of the speakers, because I feel the same way that product managers, product people, they're amazing at building things. But when
Mm-hmm.
it comes to marketing, myself included, I don't really know how to market myself. And sometimes it's that awkward, do I want to self-promote myself? Do I not? You get into that awkwardness in the beginning and then you get
Mm-hmm.
over it, I guess. So,
Mm-hmm.
for that reason, is exactly why I've picked you to be one of the speakers. And I'm super excited that you said yes. And you'll be in New York on April 1st.
I'm thrilled. I can't wait to be there.
Thank you. Tell me what life in Canada is like. I know we're only a couple of hours away, but it's right now outside my window. I'm seeing some snowflakes.
Yes, yes. We have similar weather here today. I'm just looking out my window. It's rainy and muggy and yucky, but we had a lovely weekend. So, we can't complain. At the end of the
Yeah,
day, life in Canada in general is pretty amazing. So we have terrible weather, but good people. So
fair enough. Fair enough. I've been to Canada, the Niagara Falls side,
Mhm.
Buffalo, US. Had a couple of days out there a couple of years ago, but that's as far as I've been.
Well, there's a lot of people. It's funny because whenever I am talking to people from the States, nobody knows where Nova Scotia is. Nova Scotia is on the eastern side of Canada, but it's actually pretty close to New York. It would be probably about a 12-hour drive from where I live to New York. And
Okay.
so I always use that as a reference point. They'll be like, "Are you from Toronto?" Because that's the only Canadian city they know. And I say, "No, I'm from Nova Scotia." And they're like, "No idea where that is." It's like, well, it's actually kind of close to New York. And then they all like, "Oh, okay, yeah, east, yeah,
Yes, I Googled it and now I
yeah."
know exactly where it is.
Hmm.
That's good. So tell me something about you, something of a hobby, what you did growing up. Tell me something a little bit more about you.
Sure. So these days, I always joke that I need to get some hobbies because basically most of what I spend my time on is either running my business, thinking about running my business, talking to people about business,
Yes.
or occasionally watching Netflix. So
Yes.
I don't have as many hobbies as I would like to have. That's actually on my to-do list for 2020. But yeah, growing up, I had no interest whatsoever in business. I thought that I was an artist and I wanted to be an actress and I was going to move to New York and be on Broadway, and thought
Cool.
that business was boring and stuffy suits and Excel
Yes.
spreadsheets. And
Yeah.
I had this complete misconception of what business was. And so, yeah, when I was young, I was a theater nerd. And as I was getting ready to graduate high school, and I had to try to figure out what I was going to be when I grew up, um, I got some real resistance to going to theater school from my family. I was like, you have to go to university. Like, you can't be an actress. Actresses don't make
Yeah.
any money.
Yep.
And so I was like, well, what the heck am I going to study in university? I initially thought that I might go into law and
Okay.
took a pre-law class and got incredibly bored. And I was like, this
Yeah.
isn't good. If this is like intro to law and it's not exciting, like I
Yeah.
don't think I could do this. And so yeah, I would say hobbies. I listen to a lot of business podcasts. I watch a lot of webinars. Yeah, that's kind of my jam. I get excited about it.
Fair enough. What's your favorite podcast that you currently listen to?
It's so hard to say, but I would, if I had to narrow it down, they kind of fall into a few categories. I like the Heavyweight podcast. It's one of Gimlet's podcasts.
Okay.
The host, his name's Jonathan Goldstein. He's actually Canadian. He's really funny. And what he does on each podcast, they're done like NPR style, where they tell a whole story, and they must take an enormous amount of time to produce. But he finds somebody who's had like a misconnection in their life, or a relationship that kind of devolved, and always kind of thought about it and worried about it and wanted to see what happened with that other person, kind of like solve like whatever that conflict had been, kind of wanted to come out and say, hey, like, we got to get over this. And so the episode is basically this person comes to him with a problem that they want to solve, a person they want to reconnect with, somebody they want to apologize, somebody that they want to get an answer from that they never got, that sort of thing. And then the host basically brokers the connection between these people, and like kind of you get both of their backstories. It's really neat. That was my favorite like driving podcast, if I just want to hear something that's just going to take you into a whole other world. For business podcasts, of course, the Masters of Scale podcast, your audience probably listens to that one.
Yeah.
That's such a good one. And then I really like Amy Porterfield's podcast.
Yes.
Online Marketing Made Simple. I think she kills it.
2-hour session on April 1st at Pitchside 2020. Tell me more about that. I'm super excited. You know, I think I've mentioned online before that I found out about you through a webinar, and then I took your online workshop, and that's how I, started getting into your content, which I think is fabulous. So talk us through what your session is and what attendees can expect.
Sure. So back in my founder days, I was always told you need to do customer discovery. You need to understand your customers. And so being a kind of go-getter, I was like, absolutely, I'm going to do that. If that's what you're supposed to do, I'm definitely going to do that. And so I did 300 customer discovery interviews over trying to validate my initial product idea, and realized after the fact, with hindsight being 2020, that I totally screwed them up. I was doing it all wrong. I was pitching them on my idea. I was asking for their opinions and feedback. And I didn't know how to have those conversations in a meaningful way that would really deliver what I needed to build the right product. They were great from a marketing perspective. I still learned a lot about who our audience was, and I think that came through in our marketing. But from a product side, they just didn't work. And so when I ended up closing down my tech startup and working with a bunch of other great product teams, as I said, many of them had the opposite problem. They had built these incredible products that they had a small set of subset of customers who loved, but they couldn't find more of those people. And so as I sit down with them and I try to learn about their business and who their customers were so I could help them with the marketing, it became pretty clear that they didn't really know who their customers were. Or they had mixed, the people on the team had a mixed understanding of who the customers were. There wasn't, they weren't unanimous about it. And so I got kind of interested in that problem, and that led me to what I do today. And it led me to discovering the Jobs to be Done innovation framework, which some of your listeners might be aware of.
Sure.
But that introduced me to this particular style of interview. And that interview is all about trying to understand why a customer bought your product in the first place. Trying to basically retrace their steps from the very first time that they're triggered to think, hey, what I'm doing today isn't working, right through to, okay, I've paid for your product, I've started using it. Am I satisfied? Is it doing what it promised it's going to do? And so what I teach, and what I'll be teaching in the workshop on Pitch Side, is how to actually conduct that interview. So I'll walk through the theory behind it, the tactical side. I've basically run this interview hundreds and hundreds of times now, and I've refined it specifically for marketers. And so I'll share what I call the top 10 starter questions, which are the questions that if you're just getting started and you're kind of learning your technique, your interview technique, you can stick with these ones. You'll get some good answers. But really, I'll also show people how to break away from those and dig deeper and get some really deep insights that people might not share typically. And then in the end, we'll actually do a mock interview, and people will be able to watch me do it, and they'll be able to take notes and participate and ask questions after the fact. So it's really hands-on. It's a learn about it and then let's actually do it. And hopefully if we have enough time, which we should in the 2 hours, then I'm also going to get them to have an opportunity to practice as well. So they will get to practice with each other conducting an interview. So it'll be really hands-on, really tactical. You'll walk away feeling like you know what you're doing.
Perfect. That sounds amazing. I mean, and I think I've also mentioned this to you, is that I'm a very practical kind of person. You want to learn something, but you want to also actually be able to practice it and use it and apply it in the real world. So doing these mock style interviews, I think that's a fantastic idea. And I think the attendees will love that.
It's really valuable because, I mean, think about the first time you had to go on a sales call. You could have read the best books in the world about how to close. You could have watched all of these great videos, people showing the technique and whatnot. But until you're actually on the call and you're the person and you're trying to lead the conversation, you're trying to ask the right questions, it takes practice.
It does.
That first one, people tend to be really nervous about. But just like the first time you do a sales call, you might botch it. You might not get the sale, but you realize very quickly that it's not scary. And the more you do it, the better you get. And so I want people to have their first time with me. So if they haven't done this type of interview before, I'll make sure that it'll be a safe experience.
That's amazing. No, that's really true, because the very first podcast that I did, I think I started speaking, and beforehand I would practice what I wanted to say, and the intro, the middle, the outro. I practiced everything. But when I got in front of the camera, I think the first podcast that I did was 3 cameras plus a light and 2 microphones. So once I started recording, I think for a minute I froze up, and then I started talking. I didn't know what I was saying, and then I had to stop, start. I think it took me about 5 attempts to really do it, and it still wasn't where I think it should be. But the person I was interviewing at the time, he was really good. He told me, this is your first one. By the time you get to 10, 15, whatever the number may be, you'll practice. And that stuck with me for a long time, because that's exactly what we're doing with your session. You'll be teaching something, you'll be giving them the opportunity to actually practice in the session, so they'll have knowledge plus experience by the end of the day when they walk away from our session.
That's what we're hoping. It's funny you say about your first podcast interview, because I'm launching a podcast now, and I've done 4 interviews today. I have another one scheduled to be my 5th. And I thought, because I've been a guest on a lot of podcasts, and because I do interviews professionally all the time for customer research, that this is going to be a cakewalk. Well, let me tell you, it's a different thing. Like it's a completely different experience being on the hosting end, trying to lead the discussion, take it in the right direction. And so even since my first one to my 4th one, I feel like I'm getting better, but man, I still have a long way to go. And I came into it like confident. I was like, I'm going to crush it at this. I have so much experience with doing interviews. It's a completely different style of interview. Again, different than a sales call, different than a customer research interview. And so even if you've done product interviews before, where you walk through and you show people wireframes and that sort of thing, this is going to feel different and new too. And so I think people are really going to get to experience a new way of doing interviewing, and I think they're going to enjoy it.
Definitely. And as product managers, I feel sometimes it's easy for us to bias our conversation in a specific way, because it then validates what we were thinking. And I think that's a big issue in our area of work, and hopefully from your session we'll be able to ask the right questions without leading to a bias.
Yeah, I talk about that a lot. I talk about different ways to avoid bias, and the biggest one, and it's not really a secret, the biggest way to avoid bias is stick to the things that they have done. Get them to describe things that they've done recently, and get them to walk you through them, because people are really good at talking about the hypothetical things or giving you feedback and opinions on what they think they're going to do. But when it comes right down to it, it's what they're actually doing that's way, way more useful. And as interviewers, if you're sticking to what they've actually done, then you have less chance to kind of get off and be like, well, what would you think about this? So it keeps you in line.
Definitely. I'm super excited about this. So from a ticket perspective, those who are in New York will get to see you in person, practice the mock interviews, and you'll be sharing your PDF, your PowerPoints, the slides that you use. But for those who can't make it to New York, there's also a ticket for online only, where they'll get a recording of your session, plus you'll be sharing it, your any PowerPoints or any documents that you have online as well.
Yep. Awesome.
We're super excited for that. Now, as if you were to summarize your session in 3 bullet points, what would you say? 3 takeaways, 3 bullet points, something to leave the listeners with.
I would say like mind shifting,
Okay.
tactical, and rapid learning.
Perfect. That sounds amazing. I think that's what I had on my list of things to talk about. If you're listening, the link to buy the tickets will be right underneath this audio or video, wherever you're watching it. Anything else that you'd like to add, Katelyn?
No, I hope that everyone has a great Christmas. I know that the holidays are coming for us. However you celebrate, I hope that you enjoy it. And I'll see you in the spring in New York.
Thank you so much. And am I allowed to say enjoy your vacation?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I'm going away just before the holidays. And this coming to this training, it could be a really good holiday gift to ask for, to gift to somebody. So if you're thinking of buying that special gift for the product person in your life, this might be it.
Absolutely. Give the gift of learning. I mean, giving gifts, everyone thinks of the physical gift. But, with this is why I'm launching it so early, 4 months in advance, is because right around this time, instead of giving that special product person a physical gift, give them the gift of learning.
Absolutely.
So, thank you so much, Katelyn. I really appreciate it. Enjoy your vacation. And I can't wait till April 1st.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.